yeah, absolutely no question that democracy has a completely positive set of associations, and politics, like office politics is bad. Anything political is bad, and yet you look at these two words and you're like, wait, they're synonyms. But one of them is good and one of them is bad. And if you can explain that, basically, I don't think you have any need for any of my pills.
I see you as very interested in, well, you're kind of a pill dispenser, aren't you?
Yeah, sort of.
You like dispensing pills, whether they be red pills or most recently clear pill is a recent idea you have.
Yeah, I'm not. I have questions about that as a marketing concept, but I'm pretty sincere about it.
Right, I take that as sincere. In fact, to my understanding, you actually popularized the term red pill in the political context. Is that right?
Yeah, that's actually true. I can tell you actually where I was when I came up with that, which is in the Haight-Ashbury at Hayden Masonic. I was in the People's Cafe, and the People's Cafe is the decor in the People's Cafe is entirely like 60s revolutionary stickers. So it's a very kind of positive place. To those who have seen The Matrix, it's obvious that the red pill is this kind of left-wing analogy, but what if you made it a right-wing one? Wouldn't that be interesting?
Right. So what I thought would be a good exercise to kick things off is maybe you could dispense a kind of pill right now. And I was thinking a really...
Can you be more specific?
Yeah. I was thinking a really good place to start would be on the concept of democracy.
Oh, sure. Okay. Let's talk about democracy for a second. I actually have a nice little line prepared on that, which is, people are very fond on Twitter and so forth of these political quadrants, and one way you can draw a political quadrant is to say, you can ask two questions. Is your country a democracy, and should it be a democracy? So the set of people who answer no to both of those questions, that's a relatively small set, and it's a pretty freaking weird set. So I'm kind of part of that set. So that's my perspective.
The reason I wanted to start with democracy as a good test case is because it's arguably one of the most universally applauded concepts or values right now in kind of mainstream culture, right? Democracy.
Well, I was going to stop you before you said, right now. Actually, it's pretty much universally reviled, but it's only universally reviled if you consider all historical periods as equal.
Right. For most of the history of the term, it was a bad thing.
Yeah, because people, saw, the history of Athens and so forth, and the history of Athens basically is an independent principality, basically ends with democracy, and the history of the Roman Republic ends in a very turbulent way.
Right.
And so, who's it? John Adams, the greatest American political philosopher, of course, second president. I'm trying to recall his words on democracy verbatim, but he's like, this is the worst political system ever, and this is one of the founders of the main philosopher of the main person whose kind of political writing still holds up from the American founding.
Yes, that's right. I mean, for most of the history of the term democracy, it essentially means what we now think of as something like anarchy. They're just kind of seen as synonymous with chaos, something to be avoided.
Or if you're familiar with the word populism, used as a pejorative. So one simple example that I sometimes use is, let's take two words, politics and democracy. So you'll notice that when you think about those words, you have very different associations with either. So suppose you were to say, oh, we're going to politicize this. We're going to politicize U.S. foreign policy. We're going to politicize the State Department. We're going to politicize the coronavirus. That's clearly a very bad thing to do. But if you're going to democratize this, if you're going to bring democracy to China or whatever, wasn't there that great Guns N' Roses album, Chinese Democracy? Can you buy that in China? I sometimes wonder, So, if you're going to democratize something, there's absolutely no question that democracy has a completely positive set of associations, and politics, like office politics is bad. Anything political is bad. And yet you look at these two words and you're like, wait, they're synonyms. But one of them is good and one of them is bad. And if you can explain that, basically, I don't think you have any need for any of my pills.
It's almost like in your grand narrative, democracy is sort of the root of all problems in some sense.
Oh, that would be going too far. I mean, democracy is a very legitimate. It's one of the many, like one of the three basic political systems, and as a political system, even more. It's basically a form of political energy. Even in a country like you're in the Soviet Union, there's no real democracy. Maybe there are fake elections, but you can say, does democratic power still exist? Of course it does, because it's what helped overthrow the Soviet Union. So, this basic force never, at least abstractly, disappears, and certainly no one has refuted the categorization of Aristotle into three political systems: democracy, rule of the many; oligarchy, rule of the few; and monarchy, rule of the one.